They thought they were just kicking a disruptive family off a flight to make room for a VIP. They looked at Nathaniel Hayes, a black man in a hoodie holding his daughter's hand, and saw a target they could bully. But what the gate agent and the arrogance-blinded pilot didn't know was that the man they were sneering at wasn't just a passenger. He was the lead litigator who had written the very liability clauses that kept their airline flying. By the time the sun came up, the plane wouldn't just be empty, it would be evidence. This is the story of how one bad decision grounded an entire fleet. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and the manic energy of holiday travel. For the Hayes family, this was supposed to be the start of a well-earned exhale. Nathaniel Hayes, a man who usually wore bespoke Italian suits that cost more than a Honda Civic, was dressed down today. He wore a charcoal grey cashmere hoodie, joggers and fresh Nikes. He looked like a dad on vacation. That was his first mistake. His wife, Dr. Chloe Hayes, adjusted her glasses as she checked the digital boarding pass on her phone. She was a neurosurgeon at Mount Sinai, a woman who held lives in her hands daily, but right now she was just trying to keep their 6-year-old Mia from licking the velvet rope at the Skylux Airways priority check-in. Their teenage son, Tyrell, was already drowned in his noise-cancelling headphones, oblivious to the world. "Gate B12, Chloe said, smiling at Nathaniel. "First class. I can't believe you actually splurged for the lie-flat seats to London." Nathaniel grinned, grabbing their 4 suitcases. "Big case closed last week, Chloe," the firm insisted. "Besides, I promised Tyrell he could order a steak at 30,000 feet. They approached the Skylux counter. The first-class lane was empty, a red carpet leading to a podium manned by an agent whose name tag read Patricia Geller. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and her eyes scanned the terminal with the predatory focus of a hawk looking for a field mouse. When the Hayes family stepped onto the red carpet, Patricia didn't look up. She kept typing, her acrylic nails clacking aggressively against the keyboard. "Excuse me," Nathaniel said, his voice a deep, polite baritone, "checking in for Flight 299 to Heathrow." Patricia stopped typing. She slowly lifted her head. She didn't look at Nathaniel's face. She looked at his hoodie, then his sneakers. Then she looked at Tyrell's baggy sweats. Finally, she met Nathaniel's eyes with a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "Sir," she said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweetness, "this is the priority lane. Economy check-in is down the hall, past the restrooms. You'll see the long line. You can't miss it." Nathaniel didn't blink. He was used to this. He had been a senior partner at Crystal Draper & Pierce, one of the top 3 corporate litigation firms in New York, for 5 years. He dealt with billionaires who thought they owned the law. A gate agent with a complex was a warm-up exercise. "I'm aware of where economy is, Patricia," Nathaniel said, sliding 4 passports onto the high counter. "We are in the right place, Hayes. 4 seats, 1A, 1B, 2A and 2B. Patricia let out a short, sharp exhale, as if his persistence was physically exhausting her. She picked up the passports with 2 fingers, as if they were contaminated. She typed in the name, expecting, hoping, for the system to reject it. The screen beeped. Confirmed. Patricia's eyebrows twitched. She stared at the screen. First class, full fare, paid in full 3 months ago. Status, global services, the airline's invite-only tier. Most people would apologize. Patricia Geller doubled down. "I need to see the credit card used to book these," she said sharply. "Fraud prevention. We've had a lot of stolen miles recently." Chloe stepped forward, her patience thinning. "My husband booked these through his firm's corporate travel portal. We don't have the physical card on us, and his status is global services. You can see that on the screen." "Policy," Patricia lied. She knew it was a lie. Global services members were never asked for cards. "If you can't produce the card, I can't let you board. I can, however, rebook you in economy on a later flight if you pay cash now. We have seats near the lavatory available." Nathaniel leaned in. He didn't raise his voice, he dropped it. The courtroom whisper. "Patricia, look at the screen again. Look at the frequent flyer number. I have flown 200,000 miles with Skylux this year." If you don't print those boarding passes in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to call the number on the back of that Global Services card, and I'm going to have a very interesting conversation with the Vice President of Customer Experience, who I had dinner with last Tuesday." Patricia froze. The bluff, or what she thought was a bluff, rattled her. She snatched the boarding passes from the printer and slapped them onto the counter. "Boarding is in 40 minutes, she snapped. "Don't expect overhead bin space. It's likely full." "In first class?" Nathaniel raised an eyebrow as he took the passes. "I doubt that." They walked away, Tyrell finally pulling off one headphone. "Dad, why was she looking at us like we stole something?" "Don't worry about it, son," Nathaniel said, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Just a bad day. Let's go to the lounge." But as they walked away, Patricia grabbed the landline phone at the gate. Her face was flushed red with embarrassment and rage. She dialed a number. "Captain Grant?" she whispered into the receiver. "Yeah, it's Geller at the gate. Listen, we have a situation. A family in row 1. They were aggressive, verbally abusive. I think they might be intoxicated. I felt threatened. Yeah, I know you have the senator coming in late. I think I found you some empty seats." She hung up, a smirk returning to her face. The Skylux lounge was a sanctuary of glass and silence, but Nathaniel couldn't relax. He had that itch at the base of his neck, the one he got right before a witness lied on the stand. He texted his paralegal, Sherry. "Check the bylaws for Skylux regarding subjective denial of boarding. Just curious." When the boarding call came, the Hayes family was the first to the gate. They wanted to get settled. But as they scanned their passes at the electronic turnstile, the machine flashed red. "Beep, beep. See, agent." Nathaniel sighed. "Here we go." He looked up to see Patricia standing there, but this time she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was a man who looked like he had been cast as pilot number 1 in a bad 90s movie. Captain Harrison Grant. Silver hair, jawline like a granite block, and a uniform that was perfectly pressed. He was crossing his arms, staring down at Nathaniel from the jet bridge entrance. Behind them stood 2 Port Authority police officers, their hands resting casually near their belts. "Is there a problem?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling slightly as she pulled Mia closer. "Sir," Captain Grant said, his voice booming so the growing line of passengers behind them could hear. "I've been informed by my gate agent that you were belligerent and abusive during check-in. She also suspects you are under the influence." Nathaniel laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Belligerent? I asked for my boarding passes. And under the influence? I've had a bottle of water." "I smell alcohol," Patricia chimed in from behind the captain, clutching her pearls. "And he threatened me. He said he knew people and would make me pay." "That is a gross mischaracterization," Nathaniel said, his lawyer brain clicking into high gear. "I stated I would contact customer service regarding your conduct. That is not a threat. That is a consumer right." "It's my plane, pal," Captain Grant stepped forward, invading Nathaniel's personal space. "And I don't like your attitude. I have the final say on who flies, and right now I'm saying you and your family are a flight risk. You're not getting on." The line behind them began to murmur. People were pulling out their phones. A young woman whispered, "That's ridiculous, they look totally normal." "Captain," Nathaniel said, his voice steady but hard as iron. "I am going to give you one chance to walk this back. My name is Nathaniel Hayes. We have paid nearly $40,000 for these tickets. We are sober. We are calm. If you deny us boarding, you are engaging in a breach of contract, and frankly, racial profiling." "Don't play the race card with me," Grant spat, his face turning a shade of purple. "This is about safety. Officers, remove them from the secure area. They are trespassing." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, you need to grab your bags and step back. The captain has refused you transport." "On what grounds?" Nathaniel demanded, not moving. "I want a breathalyzer. Right now. Prove I'm drunk." "We don't need to prove anything," Grant sneered. "Skylux reserves the right to refuse service to anyone, and I'm refusing you. Now get off my jet bridge before I have you arrested for interfering with a flight crew." Chloe touched Nathaniel's arm. "Nate, the kids, let's just go." Nathaniel looked at Tyrell. The boy looked humiliated, staring at his shoes as 50 strangers judged him. He looked at Mia, who was starting to cry. Nathaniel took a deep breath. He pulled out his phone. Okay, Nathaniel said. He held his hands up in surrender. We are leaving. But Captain Grant? Patricia? He looked them dead in the eye. I want you to remember the time. It is 6:15 p.m. You have just made the single most expensive mistake of your careers. Get lost, Grant muttered, turning his back. As the police escorted the family back into the terminal, Patricia picked up the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay caused by the disruption. We are now ready to board. We also have 4 first-class upgrades available for, Senator Crystal's party. Are you here? A tall, white man in a suit, accompanied by a woman and 2 teenagers, walked past the stunned crowd. They high-fived the captain as they boarded. Nathaniel saw it. He didn't scream. He didn't fight the cops. He walked to a quiet corner of the terminal, sat his family down, and opened his laptop. Dad, what are we going to do? Tyrell asked, his voice cracking. Are we going home? Nathaniel opened a file named Project Icarus. No, son, Nathaniel said, the reflection of the screen illuminating his face with a cold blue light. We aren't going home. And neither is that plane. He dialed a number. It rang once. Jonathan, Nathaniel said into the phone, it's Hayes. Sorry to wake you. I need you to trigger the clause. Yes. The nuclear clause, in the Skylux liquidity agreement, tonight. There was a pause on the other end. Nate, are you serious? That freezes their operating capital. It'll ground their transatlantic fleet until a judge reviews it. That's billions of dollars. Why? Nathaniel watched the Skylux plane push back from the gate through the window. Because, Nathaniel said, they just breached the moral turpitude covenant of their insurance bond. I'm looking at the violation right now. File the injunction. I'll write the affidavit from the food court. The corner of the terminal near the abandoned shoeshine stand became Nathaniel Hayes's war room. The humiliation of being marched past hundreds of gawking passengers by police still burned in Chloe's eyes, and Mia was curled up on a vinyl bench, exhausted from crying. But Nathaniel was in a cold, calculating zone that his partners at Crystal, Draper, and Pierce recognized as the kill zone. Nate, what did you mean on the phone? Chloe asked, keeping her voice low as she handed Tyrell a bottle of water. What is the nuclear clause? We're just going to sue for discrimination, right? Like we always hear about? Nathaniel didn't look up from his laptop. His fingers were flying across the keyboard, drafting an emergency affidavit. No, Chloe. A discrimination lawsuit takes 3 years. They settle for an undisclosed amount, fire the gate agent to save face, and nothing changes. They factor those lawsuits into their operating budget as miscellaneous legal expenses. I'm not interested in their expenses. I'm interested in their existence. He stopped typing for a moment and turned the laptop so she could see the screen. It was a dense, complex legal document titled Master Liquidity and Operational Liability, Bond Agreement, Skylux Airways. 4 years ago, Skylux almost went bankrupt, Nathaniel explained, his voice flat. They needed a massive infusion of cash to keep flying. My firm represented the syndicate of banks and insurers, mostly backed by Lloyd's of London, that bailed them out. I was the lead architect of that deal. He scrolled to page 342, section 12.b, subsection to Forter. The text was highlighted in red on his screen. It was headed, The Moral Turpitude and Reputational Risk Covenant. They were terrified of bad press, sinking their stock value again, Nathaniel continued. So we inserted a clause. It states that if an agent of the airline, including a captain, engages in verifiable, gross misconduct that causes severe and immediate reputational damage, or acts in bad faith against a high-value indemnity client, that's a global services member like me, the insurers have the right to immediately freeze the bond that insures their transatlantic fleet. Chloe stared at him, the realization dawning. If the bond is frozen, they can't fly, Nathaniel finished. It's illegal to operate a commercial transatlantic flight without active liability insurance of at least $1.5 billion. If I trigger this clause, every Skylux plane headed over an ocean is grounded the second it touches tarmac. Tyrell, who had been silently seething, looked up from his phone. Dad, someone recorded it. He held up his smartphone. A TikTok video was already trending, with 50,000 views in the last 20 minutes. The caption read, "Skylux racist captain kicks off black family for a senator, WTF." The video, shaky but clear, showed Nathaniel calmly asking for a breathalyzer and Captain Grant sneering, "Don't play the race card with me, get off my jet bridge." It showed the perfectly composed family being led away by cops, followed immediately by the senator and his family, laughing as they high-fived the captain. "Send that to me. Now," Nathaniel said. "It's blowing up, Dad. People found the senator's name, Senator Crystal from Ohio. They're tagging Skylux. The comments are crazy." Nathaniel received the file. He attached the video link to the digital injunction he was preparing. "This isn't just a viral video anymore, Ty," Nathaniel said grimly. "This is Exhibit A." He looked at his watch. 7:30 p.m. London was 5 hours ahead. Flight 299 would land around 6 a.m. London time. "Jonathan has woken up a federal judge in the Southern District," Nathaniel told Chloe. "We have an emergency ex parte hearing via Zoom in 1 hour. By the time Captain Grant lands his plane, he won't just be a pilot who made a bad call. He'll be the liability that crashed an airline." 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, the atmosphere in the cockpit of Flight 299 was jovial. Captain Harrison Grant was feeling good. He'd asserted his authority, pleased a powerful senator, and was looking forward to a steak dinner in London. He turned to his first officer, a younger man named Dave, who was staring uneasily at the instruments. "Relax, Dave. Smooth sailing," Grant said, kicking back slightly. "Did you see the look on that guy's face back at JFK? Thought he could intimidate me just because he had a fancy credit card." "I don't know, Harry," Dave said quietly. He seemed pretty calm for a guy getting booted. "And Patricia? She gets worked up. Are you sure they were drunk? The report just said belligerent." "Patricia knows her stuff. If she says they were trouble, they were trouble. Besides," Grant winked, "Senator Crystal is a good friend of the CEO. Never hurts to do a favor for the brass, right?" Just then, the ACARS, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, screen silently lit up with a message from Skylux Dispatch in New York. Dave leaned forward to read it, his brow furrowed. "Harry, message from dispatch. It's weird." Grant glanced over. The message was unusually brief and cryptic. "Priority MSG to cockpit FLT 299. Upon arrival, LHR, do not deplane passengers immediately. Await company representative at gate. Maintain cockpit discipline. Acknowledge." "Maintain cockpit discipline?" Grant scoffed. "What is this, rookie school? Probably just VIP protocol for the senator. They want to whisk him off before the plebs get off." He typed back a quick acknowledgement and went back to his coffee. He had no idea that the message was cryptic because the person sending it was currently watching their career dissolve in real time. Back in Queens, New York, at the Skylux Operations Center, a massive room filled with screens tracking every flight globally, chaos was erupting. The VP of Operations, a man named Marcus Thorne, was screaming into a phone. "What do you mean the bond is pulled? It's 9 p.m. Lloyd's doesn't just pull $1 billion bond in the middle of the night." On the other end of the line was the airline's terrified general counsel. "It wasn't Lloyd's idea, Marcus. They got hit with a TRO, a temporary restraining order, about 20 minutes ago. Federal Court, Southern District of New York. The plaintiffs argued a breach of the moral turpitude covenant." "Who is the plaintiff?" Thorne demanded, watching the big board where dozens of flights over the Atlantic were represented by small green icons. "Nathaniel Hayes, a global services member we denied boarding to on Flight 299 tonight." Thorne froze. The blood drained from his face. He knew that name. Everyone in corporate legal knew that name. Nathaniel Hayes wasn't just a customer. He was the legal shark who had practically written their operational bylaws during the restructuring. "You're telling me," Thorne whispered, horrified, "that Harrison Grant kicked Nathaniel Hayes off a plane? On what grounds?" The gate agent claimed intoxication and belligerence. Hayes submitted an affidavit with a time-stamped video showing otherwise. "It looks bad, Marcus. The judge granted the emergency freeze pending a hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The insurers have to comply. As of right now, our entire transatlantic fleet is flying uninsured." Thorne dropped the phone. He looked at the big board. There were 42 Skylux aircraft currently over the ocean, carrying nearly 10,000 passengers. "Shut it down," Thorne said to the floor supervisor, his voice shaking. "Sir? Ground stop, everything. Nothing leaves Europe for the US. Nothing leaves the US for Europe. And tell every plane currently in the air that when they land, they are to hold position. No one moves until legal figures this out." The Zoom call was terrifying in its quiet intensity. It was 10:15 p.m. in New York. On one square of the screen sat Federal Judge Arlene Brody, wearing a robe over her pajamas in her home study. She was known in legal circles as the buzzsaw for her no-nonsense approach to corporate malfeasance. On another square was Nathaniel Hayes, sitting in a private conference room at the airport hotel he'd checked his family into. He was still in his hoodie, but his demeanor was colder than any suit he'd ever worn. On the third square were three lawyers from Skylux's external counsel, looking disheveled and panicked, having been dragged out of bed. "Your Honor," Nathaniel began, his voice crisp, "the evidence submitted, Exhibit A, the video, clearly demonstrates that Skylux's agents, specifically Captain Grant and Ms. Geller, fabricated a cause for denial of boarding to accommodate a politically connected third party. This is not mere poor service. It is a fraudulent breach of contract under the terms of the Global Services Agreement, and more importantly, a direct trigger event for the moral turpitude clause of their financing." The lead Skylux lawyer tried to interject. "Your Honor, this is absurd overkill. Mr. Hayes is inconvenienced, yes, but to ground an entire fleet over one passenger dispute, it's economic terrorism." Judge Brody adjusted her glasses, staring down the camera at the airline lawyer. "Counselor, I just watched a video of your captain sneering at a sober, compliant black man about playing the race card before kicking him off a flight he paid $40,000 for, only to replace him with a white senator. Do you know what I see? I see massive potential liability. I see an insurer's nightmare. Mr. Hayes drafted that bond agreement. If he says this behavior breaches it, I am inclined to believe him until you prove otherwise." She picked up her stylus and signed the digital pad on her desk. "The temporary restraining order is granted. The insurance syndicate is hereby enjoined from backing Skylux's transatlantic operations until a full evidentiary hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I suggest your clients use the next 10 hours to figure out how they're going to explain this to their shareholders." The screen went black. The gavel had come down. The fallout was immediate. At JFK, Patricia Geller was just clocking out, her shift finally over. She was looking forward to a glass of wine and forgetting about the arrogant family in the hoodies. As she walked toward the employee exit, her manager, accompanied by two large airport security guards, intercepted her. "Patricia Geller," the manager said, looking grim. "Yes? What's going on?" "You are hereby suspended, effective immediately, pending an investigation into fraudulent filing of passenger reports and gross misconduct. Please hand over your badge." "What?" Patricia shrieked. "You can't be serious. That family was awful. Captain Grant backed me up. Captain Grant is currently flying a plane that is about to be impounded by British authorities because of your lies," the manager snapped. "The video is everywhere, Patricia. We know you swapped them for the senator. Hand over the badge. Now, these officers will escort you off the premises." Patricia, stripped of her power and her lanyard, was marched out the same doors she had watched the Hayes family leave through hours earlier. Meanwhile, Flight 299 began its descent into Heathrow. Heathrow Tower, Skylux 299, established on the ILS for runway 27L, Officer Dave requested over the radio. There was a pause. "Skylux 299, Heathrow Tower, you are cleared to land. Be advised, you are directed to taxi to a remote stand. Block 44, do not approach the terminal." "Remote stand," Captain Grant grumbled, taking over the controls. "We're a first-class heavy. What the hell are they doing putting us out in the boonies?" He landed the massive jet smoothly. As they taxied off the runway, Grant saw flashing blue lights. A convoy of 5 airport authority vehicles, followed by 2 black sedans, was waiting for them on the taxiway, guiding them toward a desolate corner of the airfield far from the terminal gates. "What in God's name?" Grant muttered. He parked the plane at the remote stand and shut down the engines. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Almost immediately, the sound of angry first-class passengers filled the cabin. Senator Crystal was already unbuckling, furious. "Captain, why are we parked out here? I have a connection," the senator bellowed, poking his head into the cockpit. Before Grant could answer, the cockpit door opened from the outside. The lead flight attendant looked pale. "Captain, there are authorities at the door. They aren't letting anyone off. They want to speak to you." Grant stood up, adjusting his uniform, trying to maintain his swagger. Probably just a security formality for the senator. "I'll handle it." He walked out of the cockpit to the main cabin door. Standing on the portable stairs were 3 officers from the UK Civil Aviation Authority and a serious-looking woman in a suit holding a clipboard. "Captain Harrison Grant?" the woman asked. "Yes." "What is the meaning of this delay?" "I have VIPs on board." "Captain Grant, I am serving you with an immediate notice of grounding for this aircraft, registration N884SL, due to lack of valid operating insurance." Grant stared at her. "That's impossible. This is Skylux. Furthermore," she continued, ignoring him, "I am serving you personally with notice of immediate suspension of your commercial pilot's license privileges within UK airspace, pending an investigation into gross misconduct reported by your Home Office and the FAA." Behind Grant, Senator Crystal pushed forward. "Now see here, I am a United States Senator. I demand to deplane." The woman looked past Grant at the senator. "Sir, this aircraft is currently unidentified regarding its insured status. Until we resolve its legality, it is essentially detained cargo. No one leaves this aircraft until we receive clearance from the High Court. You might want to get comfortable. It could be a few hours." Captain Grant turned around. The cabin was filled with angry faces. The senator looked ready to strangle him. He realized, with a sickening lurch in his stomach, that the man in the hoodie back at JFK hadn't been bluffing. The sun was just rising over London, casting long shadows over a plane that wasn't going anywhere. The dawn over Manhattan did not bring light to the 52nd floor of the Skylux Tower. It only illuminated the wreckage. Inside the executive boardroom, the air conditioning was set to a brisk 68 degrees, but CEO Richard Vance was sweating through his Egyptian cotton shirt. The room, usually a sanctuary of high-stakes deal-making and self-congratulation, currently resembled a bunker in the final days of a losing war. The wastebaskets were overflowing with empty espresso cups and crumpled legal pads. On the massive mahogany table, a constellation of tablets and laptops flickered with red arrows, all pointing down. It was 7:30 a.m. The New York Stock Exchange wouldn't open for another 2 hours, but the pre-market trading was already a bloodbath. Skylux Global Holdings, SKL, was down 14% in overnight trading in London and Frankfurt. $2 billion of market capitalization had evaporated while Vance was trying to sleep. "Talk to me, Leonard," Vance barked, not turning away from the window where he was staring blindly at the grey skyline. "Tell me this is a nightmare. Tell me a single passenger dispute didn't just decapitate my airline." Leonard Finch, the general counsel, looked like a man who had aged a decade in a single night. He was slumped in his chair, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage away a migraine that had taken up permanent residence behind his eyes. "It's not a dispute, Richard. It's a demolition," Finch said, his voice gravelly from hours of shouting on the phone. "And it's not just the stock, it's the bond. Lloyd's of London sent the formal notice at 4 a.m. They have suspended the liability coverage for the entire transatlantic fleet effectively immediately. Every plane we have over the ocean right now is flying naked. If there's so much as a coffee spill on one of those jets, we are liable for millions. That's why operations ordered the ground stop. We literally cannot afford to take off." "Fix it," Vance snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "Get the insurers on the phone. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them the passenger was drunk. Tell them whatever you have to tell them to get that coverage back." Finch let out a dry, humorless laugh. He slid his iPad across the polished wood toward the CEO. "We can't tell them he was drunk, Richard. Because the whole world knows he wasn't. Watch." Vance looked down at the screen. It was a video from Twitter, currently trending #1 globally with the hashtag #SkyluxRacism. The footage was shaky, clearly filmed by a teenager sitting across the aisle. It showed Nathaniel Hayes standing at the gate, calm, composed, his voice steady. "I am going to give you one chance to walk this back," the video Nathaniel said. He looked nothing like the belligerent drunk described in Captain Grant's incident report. He looked like a statue of dignity. Then the camera panned to Captain Harrison Grant. The contrast was visceral. Grant's face was twisted in a sneer, his body language aggressive and bullying. "Don't play the race card with me. Get off my jet bridge." Then came the kicker. The video cut to a new clip, time-stamped 3 minutes later. It showed Senator Crystal and his family, all white, all smiling, high-fiving Captain Grant as they boarded the very plane the Hayes family had just been ejected from. "It has 12 million views," Finch whispered. "The user who posted it tagged the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and the NLACP. And someone leaked the passenger manifest, Richard. The internet sleuths connected the dots in 10 minutes. They know we kicked off a black family to give their first-class seats to a white senator." Vance sank into his chair. The nausea hit him in a wave. Senator Crystal. Oh, God. I promised him a favor. He called me personally. He said he needed to get to the climate summit in London. Well, the senator is currently sitting on the tarmac at Heathrow inside a sealed aircraft that the British government considers impounded cargo. Marcus Thorne, the VP of Operations, chimed in from the corner. "He's called my desk 12 times. He's threatening to hold a hearing. He's threatening to audit us. He's screaming about kidnapping." "Let him scream," Finch said sharply. "Crystal is the least of our problems. Our problem is the man we kicked off." Vance looked up. "Hayes, who is this guy? I had HR pull his file. It just says Global Services Member. Is he some kind of activist?" Finch stood up and walked to the whiteboard. He wrote a single word in black marker. "Icarus." "You weren't CEO 4 years ago, Richard. You were still at Delta. But you remember the liquidity crisis, when Skylux almost went under?" "Sure," Vance nodded. "The restructuring saved the company." "Right," Finch said. "We needed a cash injection of $3 billion to stay afloat." The banks were terrified. They wanted assurances that the cowboy culture of the old management was gone. They demanded a moral turpitude clause in the insurance bond. It's a poison pill. It says that if our senior staff acts in bad faith, racism, fraud, gross negligence, the banks can pull the plug instantly to protect their investment. Finch turned to face the CEO, his expression grim. "The lawyer who drafted that clause. The man who sat in this very room and wrote the definition of gross misconduct that is currently strangling us." Vance felt the blood drain from his face. "No." "Yes," Finch nodded. "Nathaniel Hayes. He was the lead litigator for the banking syndicate. He built the trapdoor, Richard. And last night, Captain Grant stood on it and jumped." The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. The realization settled over them like ash. They hadn't just mistreated a passenger, they had mistreated the architect of their own survival. They had picked a fight with the one man on Earth who knew exactly where to punch to stop the heart of the company. "He triggered the clause he wrote," Vance whispered, horrified awe in his voice. "He knew exactly what would happen." "He knew," Finch confirmed. "He filed the injunction ex parte with Judge Brody. I know Brody. She hates bullies. When she saw that video, well, she gave Hayes the keys to the kingdom. The hearing reconvenes at 11 a.m. If we don't have a settlement by then, Brody makes the injunction permanent. If the bond stays frozen for another 24 hours, the covenants on our loans trigger. The banks will seize our assets. We will be in Chapter 11 bankruptcy by Friday afternoon." Vance stared at the clock. 8:15 a.m. "Get him on the phone," Vance ordered, his voice trembling. "Offer him the moon. Offer him cash. $1 million. $2 million. Free flights for life. I don't care. Just get him to drop the injunction." "We tried," Thorne said. "I called his mobile. I called his firm. I even called his wife's pager at Mount Sinai." Radio silence. "He's ghosting us." "He doesn't want money, Richard," Finch said softly. "I told you. I know this guy. I've sat across the aisle from him. He's not an ambulance chaser looking for a payout. He's a shark looking for blood. He felt humiliated. He felt powerless. Now he's reminding us that he has all the power." "Then what do we do?" Vance stood up, pacing frantically. "We can't just sit here and watch the stock price hit zero." He's coming here, Finch said, checking a message on his phone. Vance froze. What? Security just radioed up, Finch said. Nathaniel Hayes just walked into the lobby. He's alone. He told the desk he has an appointment with you. I didn't make an appointment, Vance stammered. He made it for you, Finch said, closing his laptop. He's coming up. And Richard, do not offer him a voucher. Do not offer him miles. Do not insult him. If he walks out of this room without signing a release, Skylux ceases to exist. Vance walked to the mirror in the corner of the room. He straightened his tie. He looked at his own reflection. A powerful man who suddenly looked very small. Clear the room, Vance said quietly. Richard, you need legal counsel, Finch started. I said clear the room, Vance roared, the stress finally cracking his veneer. He wants a scalp. Fine. I'll give him mine if that's what it takes, but I need to look him in the eye. Everyone out, now. The executives scrambled, gathering their papers and fleeing the toxicity of the boardroom. Finch was the last to leave. He paused at the door. He's a closer, Richard, Finch warned. He doesn't negotiate, he dictates. Good luck. The door clicked shut. Richard Vance stood alone in the silence of the 52nd floor. He turned to face the double doors, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He waited. 2 minutes later, the elevator chimed. It was a cheerful, bright sound that felt completely out of place. Footsteps approached, steady, rhythmic, unhurried. The sound of a man who owned his time and everyone else's. The handle turned. The door opened. Nathaniel Hayes stood there. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He looked like a man arriving for a routine meeting to discuss the weather while carrying a nuclear launch code in his briefcase. Good morning, Richard, Nathaniel said, his voice smooth and cold. I believe we have some business to discuss regarding the definition of moral turpitude. The 52nd floor of the Skylux World headquarters in Manhattan was usually a fortress of silence and calculated power. Today it smelled of stale coffee, fear, and impending ruin. Richard Vance, the CEO who had graced the cover of Forbes just 3 months prior as the king of the transatlantic, stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. He wasn't looking at the breathtaking view of the Hudson River. He was staring at the reflection of a man watching his legacy burn. Behind him, the boardroom was a scene of controlled chaos. The general counsel, Leonard Finch, was sweating through his bespoke suit, juggling 2 phones. The CFO was weeping silently over a tablet displaying a live feed of the stock market. Skylux shares, SKL, were in freefall, down 22% since the opening bell. Every minute the fleet remained grounded, millions of dollars evaporated into the ether. He's in the elevator, Finch said, his voice cracking. Security just cleared him. He's coming up alone. Vance turned around, his face grey. Alone? No entourage. No legal team. He doesn't need a team, Richard, Finch whispered, putting down the phone. He wrote the bond agreement that is currently strangling us. He knows where the bodies are buried because he dug the graves. The double mahogany doors swung open. They didn't bang. They glided with a heavy, expensive hush. Nathaniel Hayes walked in. He looked entirely different from the man in the hoodie who had been paraded through JFK by police the night before. Today, he was Nathaniel Hayes Escan, senior partner at Crystal, Draper & Pierce. He wore a navy 3-piece suit that fit him like armor, a crisp white shirt, and a tie the color of dried blood. He carried nothing but a thin leather portfolio. He didn't say a word. He walked to the head of the table, opposite Vance. He didn't sit. He simply placed the portfolio on the mahogany surface and rested his hands on the back of the empty chair. Mr. Hayes, Vance began, forcing a smile that looked like a grimace. He extended a hand. Sit down, Richard, Nathaniel said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the density of a neutron star. It sucked the air out of the room. Vance's hand hovered in the air for a second, then dropped. He sat. We have a limited amount of time, Nathaniel said, checking his watch, a Patek Philippe that probably cost more than Patricia Geller's annual salary. Judge Brody reconvenes the hearing in exactly 48 minutes. At that time, she will decide whether to make the temporary restraining order permanent. If she does, your insurance bond is voided for 90 days. You will be insolvent by Friday. We know the stakes, Finch, the general counsel, interjected, trying to regain some ground. Look, Mr. Hayes, we admit mistakes were made. Terrible mistakes. The gate agent was overzealous. The captain exercised poor judgment. We are prepared to make this right. Finch slid a thick envelope across the table. In that envelope, you will find a settlement agreement. We are offering a full refund of your tickets, obviously. We are adding $500,000 in direct compensation for the inconvenience. We are also gifting you and your immediate family lifetime global services status with a permanent waiver of all fees. In exchange, we ask for a mutual non-disclosure agreement and the immediate withdrawal of the injunction. Vance leaned forward, trying to look benevolent. It's $500,000, Nathaniel. For one bad night at the airport. It's a generous offer. Take the win. Nathaniel looked at the envelope. He didn't touch it. He looked at Vance with a gaze so cold it could have frozen jet fuel. Inconvenience. Nathaniel repeated the word, tasting it like spoiled milk. Is that what you call it? He slowly walked around the table, his footsteps echoing in the silent room. Last night, my 6-year-old daughter, Mia, asked me why the policeman didn't like her. She asked if she was ugly. She asked if she was bad. Nathaniel stopped behind Vance's chair. My son, Terrell, is 16. He's a straight-A student. He plays the cello. He has never been in trouble a day in his life. Last night, he watched his father get treated like a criminal. He watched a white man in a suit high-five the pilot who just humiliated us. You didn't just inconvenience me, Richard. You stripped my family of their dignity to service your political connections. Nathaniel leaned down, his voice a whisper, right next to Vance's ear. I bill $1,500 an hour. Do you really think I walked in here for $500,000? I make that before lunch on a Tuesday. He straightened up and walked back to his portfolio. He opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The NDA is off the table. I will never sign one. The money is irrelevant to me personally. If we are going to get your planes back in the air, you are going to agree to my terms, and they are non-negotiable. Vance wiped sweat from his upper lip. What terms? Term 1, Nathaniel said, pointing a finger at the paper. Personnel, Patricia Geller and Captain Harrison Grant. You will terminate them immediately. Not a suspension. Not a leave of absence. Termination for cause. Grant is a senior pilot with 20 years of tenure, Finch argued weakly. The union will have a fit. I don't care, Nathaniel snapped. But I'm not done. You will also report Captain Grant to the FAA for filing a false report regarding passenger safety. He lied to federal authorities about my intoxication level to justify an illegal ejection. That is a federal crime. You will cooperate with the investigation. He will lose his license. He will never fly a commercial airliner again. Vance flinched. Nathaniel, that's destroying a man's livelihood. He tried to destroy my reputation, Nathaniel countered. Karma is a mirror, Richard. I'm just holding it up. Term 2, Nathaniel continued. The senator. Vance's eyes widened. Senator Crystal, we can't touch him. He chairs the Transportation Committee. You kicked me off for him, Nathaniel said. Now you're going to burn him to save yourself. You will release the full unredacted passenger manifest and the internal communication logs between the gate and the cockpit. The logs where Patricia says, I found seats for the senator. You will issue a press release stating clearly that Skylux Airways removed a ticketed family to accommodate a VIP request in violation of federal regulations. That's political suicide, Vance shouted, standing up. Crystal will bury us. If you don't, Nathaniel said calmly, I will depose Senator Crystal next week. I will subpoena his texts. I will subpoena your texts, Richard. I know you and Crystal were at the Yale Club last month. Do you want a perjury trap to go with your bankruptcy? Or do you want to throw him under the bus to save your company? Vance sank back into his chair. He looked defeated. The mention of the Yale Club meeting clearly struck a nerve. He knew Nathaniel knew too much. Term 3, Nathaniel said, his voice softening slightly but losing none of its edge. Restitution. Not to me, to the future. He slid a prepared document across the table. You will establish the Mia Hayes Equity in Aviation Scholarship. You will fund it with an irrevocable endowment of $10 million. It will provide full tuition and flight training for 50 minority pilots every year. And you, Richard, will publicly apologize to my children. On camera. Today. The room was silent for a long 10 seconds. The only sound was the hum of the hard drives and the distant wail of a siren from the streets below. And if I refuse? Vance asked quietly. If I say this is blackmail? Nathaniel closed his portfolio. He picked it up. He started walking toward the door. Then I go to court in 40 minutes, Nathaniel said over his shoulder. I tell Judge Brody that Skylux refuses to acknowledge the systemic failure of its moral obligations. She makes the injunction permanent. Your bond is pulled. Lloyd's cancels your policy. Your planes stay in London, Paris, and Rome. Your stock hits zero by Friday. And you, Richard, will be remembered as the CEO who destroyed a legacy airline because he was too proud to apologize to a black family. He reached for the door handle. Wait! Vance's shout was desperate, cracking in the middle. Nathaniel paused, his hand on the brass lever. He didn't turn around. I need a signature, Richard, and I need it now. Vance looked at Finch. Finch just shook his head slowly. There was no way out. The legal trap was perfect. The moral trap was even tighter. Give me the pen, Vance whispered. Finch handed him a Mont Blanc. Vance's hand shook as he pulled Nathaniel's document toward him. He read the clauses. Termination of Captain Grant, disclosure of Senator Crystal's preferential treatment, the $10 million endowment, the public apology. It was a total surrender. It was the end of the old boys club way of doing business at Skylux. Vance signed his name. The scratch of the nib on the paper sounded like a scream in the quiet room. Nathaniel turned around. He walked back to the table and picked up the document. He checked the signature. He checked the time. Wise choice, Nathaniel said. He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed a number. Jonathan, it's Nathaniel. We're done here. Tell the judge we've reached a settlement regarding the immediate restoration of the bond. Yes, they agreed to all terms. No, Jonathan, not the money. The changes. We got the changes. He hung up. He looked at Richard Vance, who was slumped in his chair, looking 10 years older than he had 10 minutes ago. You can tell your operations center to spin up the engines, Nathaniel said. Your fleet is clear to fly. Are you happy? Vance asked bitterly. You've humiliated me. You've humiliated the senator. Nathaniel paused at the door. He thought about the way Patricia Geller had looked at his hoodie. He thought about the smirk on Captain Grant's face. He thought about Tyrell staring at his shoes, ashamed of something he hadn't done. Happy isn't the word, Richard, Nathaniel said, his eyes hard. I'm satisfied. You see, yesterday you looked at me and saw a problem you could remove. You forgot that in this country, the law is the great equalizer. You thought you were flying above it. I just reminded you that gravity applies to everyone. Nathaniel Hayes walked out of the boardroom. As the heavy doors clicked shut behind him, the silence he left in his wake was heavier than any aircraft Skylux owned. He took the elevator down to the lobby, stepped out into the bright Manhattan sunlight, and finally, for the first time in 24 hours, he took a deep breath. He hailed a cab. Where to? The driver asked. Home, Nathaniel said. I have a promise to keep to my son. We have a steak dinner to reschedule. And that is how Nathaniel Hayes turned a moment of disrespect into a movement that changed an entire industry. It's a powerful reminder that when you have the receipts and the law on your side, you don't just have to take the abuse. You can ground the bullies. What would you have done if you were in Nathaniel's shoes? Would you have taken the settlement money, or would you have demanded change like he did? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button, share this video with a friend who needs a win, and subscribe for more stories where the underdog bites back. See you in the next one.